Great. Hi, guys. Welcome to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Mardi. Mardi, welcome to the show.
Laura, it is so amazing to be here. Thanks so much.
Mardi and I are laughing because we've been having a good time already. So I want to introduce Mardi to you guys. Mardi Winder is a strategic divorce consultant and trusted professional for high achieving individuals navigating separation and divorce. She is known for helping clients reduce the emotional and financial costs of the process by strengthening decision making, communication, and conflict management during high stakes transitions. And even though we could probably stop there, I do want to say this part because I think it's important for the audience to know. With more than 30 years of experience, Mardi brings her expertise in high conflict, complex, and high asset divorces to her advanced coaching clients. Her background spans mediation, executive and leadership coaching, emotional intelligence, and strategic communication, excuse me, allowing her to support clients in maintaining clarity, confidence, and control throughout divorce and beyond. And Mardi also has a let me try that again. Mardi also has a podcast, and we are going to link everything, but we're going to start talking about it. Welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Well, I am too. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I sound so important, don't I?
Don't you? Well, you know what? Well, you've been doing this a long time, so you have a lengthy bio. So, but there's so much good stuff I want people to hear, like everything that you do. And I don't even know where you and I met, but we have been talking about divorce, narcissistic abuse, high conflict divorce, and that for the couple of years that we've known each other. So
Yeah.
it's been great to connect with you. So I wanted to have you on the show. So first thing, how did you get into doing what it is that you're doing now?
It's one of those things where it's a long, convoluted story, so I'm not going to
Mhm.
give you the whole background. But I started doing family and divorce media. I'm a Canadian living in Texas, and I started doing family and divorce mediation in the mid to late 1990s in Canada. And it's different everywhere you do mediation. It's a little bit different. I also got trained specifically in domestic violence mediation up
Mm,
there, and came down here to the United States in 2002 and started working for an organization that no longer exists, but I became a domestic violence client advocate as
mm,
part of my role there. So I
okay.
worked with a lot of people who were dealing with, I'm going to call it the more traditional
Right.
understanding of what domestic violence
Mhm.
is. So lots of physical abuse. And what I found, and what I think the domestic violence advocacy community recognized is that often physical abuse is only one of the many types of abuse that people are going through.
Mhm.
Financial, coercive control,
Right.
the whole narcissistic abuse. Like we know now we're starting to get labels and terms and recognition for those. And at the same time, I'm doing family and divorce mediation, and I'm still down here in the States now, and I'm seeing these patterns playing out where not only is one person completely overwhelmed in the mediation, and the other person is obviously, because if you're trauma informed, you can see this when you're not
Yes.
involved in it, right?
Right.
You can see it as an observer, this coercive control that was going on. And unfortunately, what I was finding is either the legal community, and this is not a slam against attorneys. It's
Right.
just, they're not trained to do this. They're not therapists. They're not advocates. They're
Right.
not necessarily coaches or anything. And so they didn't recognize it, or
Mhm.
they were the very same person as their clients were
Oh,
at the
geez.
table.
Oh,
So,
geez.
and
Yeah.
they're like attracts like, right? And
Right.
so what happened is I just found that I didn't really feel that being a neutral in a room is where I needed to be. Now, I still do a lot of mediation. I just don't do the family and divorce stuff anymore. I work now with clients, typically with people who have been targeted by narcissists, and it's mostly in relationships, but every now and then it's somebody that in the workplace that's dealing with this.
Yeah.
So I have sort of done a lot of self-study. I've taken a lot of courses and a lot of training, and become, I think, more aware of the challenges for the person who is being targeted by a narcissist.
Mhm. Yeah.
Laura, we've
Yeah.
talked about that. I've never been.
Yes.
My two marriages, my first marriage ended in a divorce. He was not a narcissist. We
Mhm.
had lots of problems, but that wasn't one of them.
Yeah.
And my second husband, he actually passed away. So he did not have that kind of a personality issue.
Yeah.
So I think I've probably dated a couple of narcissists,
Sure. We all
but
have.
for whatever reason, it was like, nope, I'm out of here. I guess, I was just blessed or lucky or something.
Right.
Um, but I've really become more attuned to the fact that people that are targeted quite often have some exceptional qualities that they
Mhm.
can use to leverage in negotiation, mediations, and that with a little support and a little coaching,
Yeah.
they can be their own best advocates at those tables.
Yeah. And the hard thing is like for me, I went through mediation, but I didn't know he was a narcissist. I didn't know what was going on. But I think back and I think the way my body language was, I remember I was very much an abused woman sitting there with this closed body language, going, yeah, that's fine. Sure, whatever you want. And that to me now would be a red flag if I was trauma for if I, was the person, if I knew then what I know now, I would have looked at that and said, oh, something's going on. Like, he was really trying to do all the things. And she did stop him a couple of times and said, like, that's not the law. You don't need, this is what's going to happen. But I didn't know what to fight for. And I didn't
Right,
know how to talk about it. Also, I should have had my own representation, which I didn't, because mediation is great. Mediation is great. But I wish I would have had somebody on my side only that
right.
would have said, these are the things you can talk about and ask about. And, because I think he hid money, but I'm not going to, what can I do about that?
Yeah,
And there's nobody asked about it. And he's not going to tell you.
right.
He's not going to tell you he has extra money somewhere.
And that's I think if the opportunity for mediation is present, take it, but just know
Yeah.
where that bottom line is, and you can walk out at any point in time. And
Yeah.
that's where I think that's where it becomes hard because when you've been under that coercive control or
Yeah.
under that highly manipulated environment,
Yeah.
I tell people it's literally like you've been a hostage. And
Hmm.
you wouldn't ask a hostage to negotiate with with the person that kidnapped them. I mean,
Yes.
we would never expect that, but yet in families, that's what we expect to happen. And
Right.
I think that you're right. Typically, what I advise my clients is if you don't want to have an attorney sitting there with you, because hey, that can really run up the bucks if you're in there all day.
Right.
At least have them that you can call them, or tell the mediator that you're not going to sign anything. You just want a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
And then you take it to your attorney and you have your attorney review it and say, is everything in here that needs to be in here? And then if there isn't
Yeah.
anything, the attorneys can negotiate or you can go back to mediation again and try to get it resolved.
And that's definitely what was allowed and what happened. But because I didn't know what was going on, really, and I didn't know I was in abuse, that we did everything together. It was all
Right.
very much, and he led it. He sort of led the way. He kept asking me, like, what are you waiting for? Like, why
Yeah.
aren't we getting divorced? And also my heart was broken that he was in such a hurry to get a divorce, right? I mean, we decided together, but of course my heart is broken.
Sure.
So I didn't know. And so now I know, and I would have done things differently, but that doesn't matter. It's like,
Well,
that's why we talk about it, because so that other people can understand.
yeah.
So, because we, in mediation, that she wrote out the divorce decree, we agreed to everything, and then we can go file. But I wish I would have had somebody just saying, like, on my, just on
Yeah.
my own, that I said, can you look at this and
Right.
see if everything's right? Because I was the one who had to do it and look at it and say,
Right.
like, hey, this is, go, like, she accidentally gave my cat to him. I'm like, can I have my cat, please? And I didn't want to, we joked about it. It's funny to me now. We joked about it going, can you imagine if you ended up with the cat? And I'm thinking, there are people who do horrible things because
Yes.
they got the animal. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yes.
want I want the dog only because he doesn't, or
Yeah.
because he wants the dog, right?
Right. Right.
And yeah, I literally was like, I know this is stupid, but you gave my cat to him. And she's like, oh, let me change it. And I was like, I just was thinking, now looking back, I'm like, you never know what he could have done, because now I know.
And you know so pets and kids are one of the two of the biggest reasons why people stay in abusive relationships,
Yeah.
because either the person literally has the pet and won't release it to them,
Yeah.
or the typically the woman is afraid of going and
Yes.
leaving the pet because of that. And
Yeah.
so, that was one of the big things we were trying to work with when I was dealing with this, was trying to find a way that we could accommodate in the shelter for
Yes.
victims to be able to bring their pets with them. And that turns into a nightmare because people have dogs and cats and
Oh,
parakeets and horses and chickens and you name it. They've all
right.
got these animals that mean so much to them, and
Yes.
it becomes tough. So we would try to, can we find a friend that could keep it for you?
Right.
That
Yeah.
the offender didn't know, the abuser didn't. I also work in the prison system. So that the abuser didn't know, so they wouldn't have access and wouldn't just show
Yeah.
up.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's good. Yes, that's
yeah,
really good. Yeah, there's so much to consider, and I know I have women. Of course, I work with women in midlife, but many of them are, in midlife and saying like, I just feel stuck because of the
yeah,
trauma bond, and I'm sure that you are seeing that or talking to people who are dealing with that because look, I was in the trauma bond, but I didn't know what was happening. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I didn't even understand the trauma bond of my abuser is also my soother. Like I didn't understand that concept. And so it was hard for me to pull the trigger to say, yes, I'm done. Yes, I'm
Right.
done. It took me so long. So now I have so many women who say, like, I have been in too many years. I don't want to be here anymore. I
Yeah.
don't know how to get out. And it's hard. So that's why when we talk about these things, we can encourage others, give others hope. And that's why I like to talk about it for sure.
Well, and I think Laura, one of the things is that um, there is a fear because
Yeah.
your partner has chipped
Yes.
away over the years. It's like water dripping on a rock. Drips on it long enough, eventually that rock is going to be eroded away. And
Yeah.
it's your ability to, they just rip that sense of I can take on a difficult challenge. I can move out on
Right.
my own. And
Right.
they just strip all that. They make you feel like you are incapable,
Yes.
and that the only option for you is, if you leave me, your only option is to go, become a drug addict and a prostitute and live on
Right.
the street in a cardboard box, because that's all you're good for. And
Right.
that's what is maybe not overtly stated, but that's the effect of chipping away, that you just feel that there's no options. The only thing for you is you're going to be homeless, you're going to be broke, you're going to be
Right.
destitute.
Right.
And in most cases, that is not even close to the reality.
Exactly. And you were talking earlier how they don't choose women who are like that. They choose women, because that's how they get us. They get us there. But at
Right.
the beginning, I'm smart and educated, though it doesn't matter. They'll grow after anybody, but I'm smart and educated and I have a big personality and all that. And so like all those things seem good at the beginning. And then he chipped all those away to
Right.
where I actually didn't he used to like say like, oh, anybody can do speech therapy because I used to be a speech therapist. Well, anybody can do that. Like, what's the big deal? Well, I got
Yeah.
a child that was nonverbal to talk today. Well, anybody can do that. It was that kind of thing. So it was like
Yeah.
slow erosion of everything, any kind of self-esteem, any kind of anything.
Yeah.
And it was to the point where even my dad was worried about me when I left. He said, I don't know how, I didn't know how you were going to live on your own. And I'm like, wow, that's what I look like at the end, that they didn't even think I could live on my own. And I'm like, but I was running an entire household, so
Do,
how, but they don't, yeah, they just, that's how I looked.
I had a client, and this is a little bit tangential, but you know
Yeah,
me, this is the way I go. I
fine.
just all over
Let's
the
go.
place. Um, I
Mostly women listen to the show. They can keep up.
Okay, good, good, good. I worked with a client a few years ago, and when she was very accomplished, was very well regarded in her community. Really,
Yeah.
people would look at her and go, "Man, that's one badass woman. She's got everything under control.
Yeah.
She's doing everything." And whenever they would go out, and she didn't find out about this for years and years afterwards,
Oh,
and it was only through some disclosure by his child
yeah.
that they had married, he had a child. Anyhow, this all came out later on.
Yeah.
When they were going out to events, he would roofie her, not a whole roofie, but a part of a roofie.
Wow.
He would put that in her drink, like they'd
Yeah.
have a glass of wine or a drink cocktail before they went out. And she would
Uh,
get sloppy drunk at the event and
yeah.
couldn't remember. And all he would do is tell her, "You made a total embarrassment of me, of
Yes.
yourself. You were horrible." And she would go, "But I didn't drink anything."
Right.
And or I had one glass of wine, and
Right.
it was only years after. This was the systematic way, and her
Yes.
whole family thought she was an alcoholic. Her friends thought she was an
Mhm.
alcoholic because he had created this image that she was drunk all the time, and
Yeah.
she did not. She was, in my book, she was a teetotaler. She might have like one glass of wine every
Right.
now and then,
Right.
but a bottle of wine would last her a month and
Right.
or more. And it
Right.
wasn't a daily drink or any, but he had everybody in her family convinced that she was an
Oh
alcoholic
my
and that
gosh.
she couldn't be trusted. She was dangerous to herself and she couldn't be on her own.
Yeah.
So yeah,
This was the thing, the smear campaign, which really that sounds like it, right? The smear campaign is going on behind the scenes of I'm in a terrible marriage, she's a terrible wife,
yeah,
and all these things, which I suspected over the years, but I wasn't sure. But then my grown kids told me,
yeah,
yes, this is
yeah,
what dad has said about you, and this is
yeah,
what dad has been telling people. And so, but what that made me look, when I had a name for my pain and I understood narcissistic abuse, I was able to move forward because I was like, oh, this is why they do this. And he was doing that. I'm not crazy. That was actually the first word out of my mouth when I found out about his girlfriend. I said, I knew it. I wasn't crazy. And
yeah,
so that actually like helped me heal like I don't know how many levels because I talked myself into I'm so crazy. Like I wanted to go check myself in, but he had gaslit me so bad that everybody hated me and I was such a problem. And when we were at that party, you were really loud. And I was like, I was really loud. I don't remember. And
yeah,
everybody was embarrassed. And I'm like, everybody was like everybody, like you took a poll. And
yeah.
so it was hard to reconcile what he was saying to me and what I was enjoying myself. So he didn't even have to drug me. He just had to gaslight me to death,
Well, yeah.
to understand to confuse me into what was happening around me.
Yeah. And then they go around and they say to all their friends, "Oh, I'm really sorry that Marty was so loud at that
Yes,
party." And they
exactly.
gaslight everybody. And so I did some training with, or not some training, but I listened to several webinars and went to several
Yeah.
things that Rebecca Zung hosts. And she's
Okay.
that attorney that deals with um, how to handle narcissists in the court and through the legal system.
Oh, okay.
She's great to follow on YouTube. She's got a lot of videos up there.
I will write it down. Yes.
Yeah, and she's got a book out, and I can't remember what it's called, but it is an excellent book. I know it's somewhere behind me, but I don't want to turn around and look for it
And
right
that's
now.
okay. And I will actually add it to the show notes so that as we're talking about it, anybody can go to the show notes and we'll
Yeah,
add her
great. So
stuff.
yeah, Rebecca Zung, and she calls those people who do that the flying monkeys, and I
Oh,
just love
yes.
that term because to me that
Yes.
just resonates, right? I could just see a
Yes.
whole horde of those flying monkeys. But
Yes.
and the thing is the sad thing is those people who are able to do that are typically pretty charismatic. They're and they come across as so genuine and caring about
I
the
know.
person that they're smearing and bad
Yes.
mouthing. I'm
No.
really sorry.
Yeah.
And it's icky. It
It
just makes you
is.
crawl. Yeah.
He used to do when we were in therapy at the times that we went together, he would walk in and he'd go, I am really worried about Laura. That's how
Right.
he would grab the therapist. I'm
Yeah.
really worried about it. Because usually we were going because of something we couldn't communicate. Because there's that communication barrier, which is funny because I always thought I'm a good communicator. I have a degree in speech therapy and I have a podcast now, but I thought I could communicate, but he just didn't understand me. He's like, I never understand what you're saying. You're so hard to understand. And
Right.
so that's why we would go to therapy. And he would often say, oh, I'm so worried about her. And I think he was saying those kinds of things behind my back as well. Like, I feel like she's going crazy. Like
Yeah.
something's wrong with her. She's going crazy. So there were so many times I walked out of there on anxiety medicine and all that and I had to go to extra therapy for me because something was wrong with me. And now I know I was being gaslit and, so
So, and I'm taking this. I was telling you before we got on the recording
yeah.
that doing this relational trauma certification
Hmm.
training, it's fascinating because we're investigating or being taught about a whole lot of neuroscience that is now catching up to this.
Yes.
And they've actually, there's a fantastic book. This one I do have on my desk. It
Okay.
is, if you want to read some, it's pretty dense, but it's called Women Who Love Psychopaths.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And it's by Sandra Brown and Jennifer Young. And it's inside the relationships of inevitable harm with psychopaths, sociopaths, and narcissists. And
Mhm.
there is a whole bunch of new neuroscience that shows that the brain of these people,
Yeah.
mostly men, but not always, the
Yes.
brain of these people, so these are diagnosed like narcissistic
Okay.
personality
Okay.
disorder, not just people that are kind of jackasses, but like
Right.
they have the
Yeah.
diagnosis or they're psychopaths or sociopaths, that they actually have brain differences. They have lower amount of gray matter in their brain. They
Wow.
have lower cognitive abilities, even though they may appear to be very intelligent.
Yes.
Um, and that they have this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's a part of your brain that is able to determine like if a person is a threat to you or not.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and that part of the brain is hyper stimulated. So they see everybody coming at them as a threat.
Mm.
And that's why they lash out quite often and
Right.
react.
Yes.
And then once they get somebody that they trust, that's why that person becomes their supply because that is a person they know that is not a threat to them.
Yes.
And they're able to process that. But they really do have these communication problems. And this is why you cannot be reasonable with them because they
Right.
have a difference in their brain. They
Yes.
have no sense of consciousness,
Right.
conscientiousness. They're
Yes.
perfectly happy to say, oh, sure, to like a mediator or a therapist or
Right.
whoever, or a law enforcement officer. Yep, I'll do that, or I'll pay that ticket or
Right.
whatever, and then
Yes.
walk away and rip it up, and they don't
And
care.
they don't care. Yes.
Yeah,
And that I saw that so many times. And I was listening to someone, the speaker that I follow, and she had, her husband couldn't keep it in his pants. And so then they had this public like reconciliation and all that. And they did this second wedding, renewing their vows because they've forgiven each other and all this stuff, right? But before that, she had said to her therapist, I I am going to give him, I'm going to give him 6 months to really change. And they said, you won't need it. You won't need
yeah,
6 months. And
yeah,
she was filing for divorce within a couple, even after all this. I mean, she was
yeah.
so ashamed, of course, but that's how she was feeling. She's like, oh my gosh, we just did this whole public renewal of vows and he couldn't keep it in his pants because he wasn't going to change. Doesn't matter. He'll jump through the hoops. And I saw that so many times with my ex. Now, of course, I allowed it over and over because I gave him an inch, she took a mile. And that was my own patterns of needing to be loved and him, and that was in the trauma bond, and I didn't want him to leave me and all those things, right?
Yeah. And this is where I think I find this so fascinating
Yeah.
because what you're describing is exactly what they talk about in this book, and they call those things super traits. So
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of them, but they're things like loyalty and
Yeah.
honesty and tolerance and
Yeah.
the willingness to go an extra mile to give somebody the benefit of the doubt over and over and over. People that are driven to keep the relationship on an even keel and running
Yeah.
right, which means giving everything to the other person just to prevent the
Right.
relationship from rocking. So
Yeah.
these are really good traits.
I,
What they
until someone
do,
takes advantage.
exactly. They manipulate those
Yes.
traits and they actually become weapons that they use against you.
Yes, exactly.
Because I've had so many of my clients that have said, I'm going to go back. And I just said, you can go back if you
Yes.
want, but
Yes.
just know that you are creating a boundary now. And the boundary is it's getting bigger and bigger every time you do
Right.
this. because
Exactly.
you're giving them that opportunity and they're using it against you. I've even had clients say that their spouse has said, "Well, if you really cared about me and the kids, you would never ask for this divorce."
Mhm.
Again, using your loyalty, using your commitment to the family,
Right.
those
Right.
super traits, using them against you.
Using them against you. And also they could be whatever, say they're doing something, say they're stealing money or cheating or, having, watching pornography or whatever it is. And you're approaching them about it, but it becomes about you are
Right.
the one breaking up the family, things like that. I have a friend whose husband walked out, right? And 3 years later, she was like, hello, are we ever going to get a divorce? Like, you obviously aren't coming back, whatever.
Right. Right.
And so she said, you know what? I'm going to file. So she did, whatever she did, she filed. And guess what? Guess what? He's telling everybody
Right.
she
Yeah.
filed for a divorce,
Yeah.
right? Even,
Yeah.
they forget the part at the beginning. I always say that. I go, my ex forgets to tell everybody how he drove me to the brink of insanity and he had a girlfriend and those kinds of things. It's like, no, Laura just wanted a divorce. You're right. Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you sleep at night. And that to me, look, I always say I walked out of my marriage with integrity. And all I mean by that is I'm okay with everything I did and that
Yeah.
I have super traits and I was loyal and all that. I'm okay with that. That's okay with me. Because I tried everything. It takes two to tango in this regard.
Right. Right. And it seems to me, Laura, at least I know from my experience in the workplace, the more that you try to accommodate and the more that you try to adjust what you're doing so that you have to have as
Yeah.
little impact with them, the more they seem to take that as acquiescence to whatever they want to do.
Right. Exactly.
Um, and I tell this story. This is a client I worked with a long time ago. She gave me permission to anybody any information about her other than this story,
Yes.
in that she was a person who was very well regarded in her community. She didn't have a business, but she was had run a household and supported her husband, who was a very prominent
Hmm.
professional. He was bringing hookers into the house.
Oh my gosh.
um, I shouldn't say hookers, that's a derogatory term. He was
Okay.
bringing sex workers into the house.
Oh
And
my gosh.
when he wanted to have that relationship, she went and stayed in another room and gave them the
Yeah.
run of the house. And because he had convinced her that she no longer was appealing, she didn't provide the intimacy he
Yeah.
needed.
Right.
And if she just could be better, he wouldn't have to do this. And he played upon her concerns about her weight. And, she was
Yes.
getting older. She'd had
Right.
several children. And, your body just doesn't
Like,
look the same it
you
does
did
when
this
you're
to my
20.
body.
And
Yes,
it was
exactly.
all her fault that he had to go outside of the house to
Yes.
find this. And I just thought, and she was so mortified. I mean, she's just you could
Yeah.
tell that was the hardest thing she'd ever had to tell me,
Yeah.
tell anybody. And she, to this day, I don't think she's told a lot of people about it because it's so embarrassing and humiliating for her.
It is, and I just interviewed somebody who did something similar. I mean, the thing is that that's why we tell these stories because they're not uncommon. Because
Right.
when I was interviewing this person, the her ex said exactly what you just said. Her husband said was that, you can't satisfy me the same, and
Right.
I just want to be happy and all this, and so I would like to date other people. And I stopped her and I said, and you let him? And she goes, of course I did. She
Yeah.
goes, of course
Yeah.
I did. I was fully brainwashed. And that's not to shame anybody. It's just to show why I love talking about these things. Because the minute we tell our story, shame is broken. Because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. How did I miss 33 years of abuse? But
Right.
once I started talking to people and I talked to women who were in 45 years, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me. I
It's
don't know.
not. Yeah.
It's not just me. And so that's why we have to keep talking about it and say, really, they have similar patterns. They do the same things. And that's why we have to keep focusing on us and our healing so that we can get through the other side. Otherwise, we will do those kinds of things. I think Demi Moore just released something in her memoir about it, that she had a three-way in her
Yeah.
marriage because that's what he wanted. And she said, I didn't know how to say no. I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
somebody like that, like when you look at her and she said, well, I think she's done a lot of healing, so she's pretty strong, but she just talked about it,
Yeah.
saying like it can happen to any of us when we just think we can't say no. We're abandoning ourselves.
and it's never your fault. I
No.
really, I cannot stress this enough.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
it's like, I think there's 5 or 6 things that you have to do to be considered brainwashed. There has to be random rewards, random punishment. There has to be food or sleep deprivation. There
Right.
has to be isolation, and then I think there has to be like alcohol or drug use. I think there's those 3 things, and that's kind of what cults use too.
Right.
Think of
Yeah,
this. It's a cult of one. The one thing
it
that might
is.
not be present in most cases is alcohol or drug abuse, but they may be using, because we know that these personalities are high risk people and they tend to overdo everything they do. And so alcohol and drugs can be a factor in
Yeah.
many relationships, or sex addiction or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
And this is the thing, like when I think back to my ex, when you said, "Oh, not always drug and alcohol," and I think back to my ex, his family has a history of alcoholism, and so when we hung out, all of his family and everything, everybody was drinking all
Right.
the time. And so when I think about it, but what I was going to say about that was that it all seemed normal. It
Yeah.
all seemed the way it is because that's what was going on in my family as well. So it all seemed normal. It all seemed like, well, this is what we do.
Yeah.
It's 4 o'clock. It's happy hour time. I guess we're all drinking. We're all hanging around for the weekend. And everybody doesn't live in town, so we'd get together in one place, and that's what we would do. And so everything seemed normal. And that's the hard part too, is unlearning. I had to unlearn 55 years of stuff,
Right.
unlearning. Cause I thought, "No, I'm only going to have to unlearn 33 years." No, I just did all 55. I said, let's just start at the beginning. I healed her all the way down. I mean, just,
Yeah.
you have
And
to.
and sometimes I get people who come to me and they're like, but I don't have this in my background. Like,
Yeah.
I had a great childhood. I love both of my parents. There was
Yeah.
no dysfunction. Well, there's dysfunction in everybody's family, but there
Right.
wasn't anything that rose
Yeah.
to the level of being traumatic or creating
Right.
those attachment disorders, or they
Yes.
weren't like out there looking for a father figure or a mother figure or whatever.
Yes.
They
Yes.
they really they were highly intelligent, like you said, well educated, or
Mhm.
well established within their community, and for whatever reason, at the right time, at the wrong time for them and the right time for the narcissist, somehow the
Right.
connection occurred. And these guys, let's face it, these people don't start out the very first date
No.
acting like as their typical jerky selves. They go over a period of time, but they typically rush the relationship because they know
Yes.
they can't maintain that, you know
The
nice
mask.
guy,
Yeah.
as
Right.
your book.
Yes.
They can't maintain that, so they push you through the relationship, and that's where it becomes, if you're somebody that maybe is a little bit lonely, or maybe
Yeah.
doesn't have a strong support network in your life, these people can just bowl you right off your feet in the best possible way during that courtship. And then it's once you're in with them, once you've gone through that marriage thing. I've had people say, the very second we walked out of the church, it was like they had flipped a
Yes.
switch. It wasn't even after the honeymoon. I know people who have said that their spouse went out and had a relationship with somebody else on their honeymoon,
Yeah.
because again, they weren't good enough, or they weren't,
And that's the thing. They
whatever.
have them like locked down, right?
Yeah.
Because okay, so I never understood. And so I listened to experts who talk about this because I never understood why get married. Like, why would they get married? I don't get that. But to them, it's like the ultimate con
Control.
prize.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like their ultimate prize of the whole con.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And that to me, and it also helps them in the appearance of the nice guy and all that, right? And it helped the facade because, that happened to me. He rushed me to the altar. And then that happened with his new wife, same thing. And so somehow maybe on the outside, it looks like, oh, he's so happy now or whatever. He was so miserable before, whatever he's telling people. And that is like the ultimate, right?
Yeah.
Somehow. And I have had women who are like, yeah, but he's with somebody and I'm alone. And I said, but you think that getting married and having somebody is the prize when you are the prize.
Right.
You are the love of your life.
Yeah.
That's what you need to be focusing on. And that's why people say, like, look at the glow up. Who who went into a relationship right away and who's out there doing the work on their mental health.
Yes. And I think this is kind of a misunderstanding or a common myth is that these people that exhibit these traits are really full of themselves and believe themselves to be.
Right.
They're not. They're completely empty vessels. They have
Yes.
no sense of self. And that is why they need, I really believe, and I'm not a therapist, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a
Yeah.
scientist, I'm not an expert, but I believe from my reading of a lot of people who know what they're talking about
Yes.
and listening to people like on podcasts like yours and your podcast, of course, but is that they need that companion. We know about the whole term narcissistic supply,
Yes.
and it's like it's like if you have a pond in your backyard and you go fishing, you can always go fishing in that pond in your backyard. You
Yes.
might want to go catch a marlin off the
Right.
coast. Hey, that fish is always in that pond in your
Right.
backyard. And so I think that's what the spouse is. They're kind of like the steady supply that if
Hmm.
they that's like their comfort zone or their
Yeah.
backup plan if they don't get what they want out in the
Yeah.
world. They know the spouse is always there to do that. And you're
I
right, it helps keep up appearances.
Well, and I always say they're so lazy because I'm like, I don't know how many times I heard that it was a coworker that so and so, that one of the ladies in my group, like, yeah, he went off with a coworker. I'm like, they're always going off with coworkers because they're really lazy, and they're gonna fish in their own
Yeah.
backyard, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And this is the thing that I didn't want to hear. But why they seem like such like your fairy tale and what you've always wanted is because they're mirroring you
Yeah.
back to yourself. And that's why they're going after these women who are smart and intelligent and maybe have a social group and are involved in the community and all that because they're going to mirror that so that they look like, I mean, he started giving to charity and serving the homeless. And I'm like, that wasn't him when I would have met him, but
Right.
that really helps the facade.
Yeah.
He seems like such a great guy. And so I was like, oh, we're falling in love with ourselves. And that was like, oh, that was hard to hear, but it's true. I mean, it's what
Well,
they're doing.
yeah, and I think that's what I always tell people about. There's a couple of things that you can do on your very first date to kind of, and Dr.
Oh,
Ramani is
okay.
really good about
Okay.
talking about this,
Okay.
sorting these people out. So the first thing is when they say, "Well, what do you like to do?" Don't answer that question.
Yes.
Never answer that question
Right, because it's
because
their
no matter
favorite
what you
thing to do
say, they're
too.
going to
Yeah.
say, "Oh my God, that's my favorite." So
Yeah.
say, "Well, you know what? What do you like to do?" And
Yeah.
just do that and see how frustrated they get. And they will
Right.
get pretty frustrated pretty fast. And the other thing that she suggests you do is if they set up if you're going out, and this is a good test too, if it's a couple of times in and they've set up they want to go to a restaurant and
Yeah.
they've made a reservation, about a half an hour before, just call them and say, I've changed my mind. I don't think I want Italian. I'd like Chinese. Let's go to this
Yeah.
restaurant. See how they react.
I always
Because if they,
say, I like that you said that because I hadn't heard anybody talk about that, but I have heard dating people talk about that to see like how are they? They said put yourself into situations, not unsafe situations, but different situations, not just the perfect wine and dinner date, right? But go hiking or get yourself into other situations. And even I always say like this isn't a test, but it sort of is like be late to the
yeah,
date and
yeah.
see what happens, see how they react, see what they say to you, them saying like you're so disrespectful and things like that. Like this is why I don't date because I have zero tolerance.
Me too. I'm
I
so happy as a single woman now. I just
I
don't even
am too.
care.
Look, I got my cat. I don't know if she's still taking her nap. There she
She
is.
is. She is. Yes.
She's in every episode, usually behind me, but I'm like, we're gonna record an episode tonight. But I've got my cat and I'm so happy. I have peace, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. I want to talk a little bit about some of the other things you do. Like, when did you start your podcast? Let's talk a little bit about that first, and then I want to talk to you about your summits. But tell me a little bit about when you started your podcast.
Oh my gosh. I think this summer it's been 3 years. I've got 250 episodes up there.
That's
So,
amazing.
yeah,
It
it's been up there for a while.
That's so cool. And why did you decide to do a podcast?
So I started out doing a podcast specifically to help women going through divorce
Okay.
because, you know, it's still hard and it's hard in a lot of locations. Like I
Yeah.
live in a very small rural area, and there's not a lot of resources here. And I wanted something where people could just tune in,
Yeah.
listen,
Love
get some
that.
information. So mine is all interview style. I talk to different divorce experts. Laura's been on it.
Hmm.
Laura's been on a couple of things, and so there. It's pretty eclectic. It's all over the board. We've got mindset people
Yeah.
that come on.
Yeah.
We've got narcissistic recovery people or narcissistic experts, attorneys,
Yeah.
financial planners, you name it.
That's
Kind of an
perfect.
eclectic
Yeah.
thing.
So
Yeah,
that's really good. So helping people um going through divorce and beyond, like you
right.
said, right?
Yeah.
And then okay, so yesterday Marty hosted a summit and I had the honor of speaking on it. And also I interviewed people, which I always love doing. So tell me when you started doing these summits and why you decided to do summits, which you usually do a couple times a year, right?
Yeah, so I do kinds of summits. So the big summit
Okay,
called the
hold on
D
one
Shift
second. Because
Summit.
hold on one second. You cut out, so we have to fix that. So go back and say, I think you said I do a couple different summits. Is that what
Okay.
you said? Is that
Yep.
what you said? Okay, say that
Yes.
part again. Yeah.
Okay. So I do a couple of different types of summits. So there are the big summits that I do twice a year,
Hmm.
and this was my third one. So I do one in the spring-ish and one in
Yeah.
the fall-ish. And there's usually anywhere between 30 and 50 speakers on them. In one day, we have multiple tracks running,
Yeah.
and it's all about divorce. And it's for men and women, but I will have to say probably 90% of the people that attend are women. And
Yeah.
they're free to attend. And it's just a way for the divorce community, the divorce professional community, to give back to people who are going through the process.
Yeah, I
So,
love it. I learned
yeah,
so I mean, I learned so much yesterday. I love interviewing everybody too because I get to talk to so many people and I get to ask the questions I want to ask and ask
yeah, it's
the
fun. Yeah,
things I wish I would have known before I went through my divorce, which so now I can take that information and help others, because that's all we can do. And that's the thing is if you're listening now and you need resources, like all these things are accessible, like just, connect with Marty because she's got so many resources if you're going through divorce or after divorce or anything to help with the healing. So it's so great. Where are we at? I don't know. I think we're at the end.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this has been fantastic. Laura, you and I can just, I think, sit and chat for the whole day.
Yes,
So,
we can. I mean, we talked we talked before. We can. And so I think in the future we need to do something in person so that we can get women together. We were talking about that it's after the pandemic, it might be time to start getting people
yeah,
together. And I get
yeah,
excited. I get excited about that too. I love connecting women and why I so enjoy doing my podcast and being on social media because I love doing things to help connect because I don't know. I
and
think we need that
there's a
support.
power in sharing your story. There really is a
There
power.
really is.
And when you've got like-minded individuals coming together and
Yeah.
supporting each other.
Yeah.
I went to my first women's retreat a few years ago, 3 years ago now, first one
Uh-huh.
I'd ever gone to, and it was amazing. I'm still in touch with several of the women that are
Oh,
there. So,
yeah.
I just think there's something for people who have gone through this kind of a divorce,
Yes.
which is more difficult than an
Yes.
amicable divorce for sure.
Right.
Um, to just have a space where they could come, hear some people talking about things,
Right.
have some fun conversations, get to know some people, find some
Yes.
support and encouragement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I always enjoy like going to conferences and even retreats because like just to have that girlfriend time, even in the hotel room, everybody sitting around the bed and chatting and stuff. That to me is so much fun. That's where you build those connections.
Right.
And to me, that kind of stuff is so much fun. Girlfriend time. So Marty, thank you so much for being here. We're going to put everything in the show notes. And so I just want to thank you for being here. And guys, please reach out to Marty, check the show notes, connect with her, and please follow her everywhere. And of course, if you enjoyed our episode, please go to Apple and Spotify and let them know you love us. Marty, thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
Laura, thanks as always. This has been so much fun.
I have to do something that involves stopping this.